Well, hello again. I got your plan here. Thanks for sharing it. It's open in my copy of Home Designer Pro 2019. And the thing about foundations is, unless you're a state licensed, it's licensed in your state, structural engineer, you can't legally design the foundation. I just want to get that out of the way up front. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an architect. I'm not an AIB certified building designer. So I could be fined $5,000 by the state of Texas, where I live, for designing a foundation. So I don't do it. All of my foundations are cosmetic. So what I'm going to show you are cosmetic things you can do about the foundation. Don't bother with the foundation other than it doesn't look goofy, because you're not a state licensed structural engineer, okay? That said, first place I go about foundations is Edit Default Settings, Foundation. This is where you set defaults. You got that set. I never use that setting, but nothing wrong with it. And only a structural engineer can designate if a house is going to have a monolithic slab, or have grade beams on piers, or walls with footings, like I said, legally. So I mainly worry about appearances. Now, slab thickness across the entire United States, for the most part, is 4 inches. I've done some at 6 inches, but 4 is okay. And this sets the minimum height for the stem walls. So walls and footings is checked there by default. So that determines automatically how this stuff's going to build. I'm going to uncheck automatic. The next place is room dialog boxes. I'm going to go to the structure tab, and garages commonly have a slab floor. And I never use these settings here, never. I always use floor under this room. And then the floor finish is 0, because garages commonly don't have hardwood floor or vinyl floor. They have concrete, so the floor finish is 0, and the floor structure is 4. And there's a setting here. Let's see. 400 a day. Okay. Now, commonly, I set the garage lower than the house. Now, why do I do that? Well, it's like porches. This house has no porches, but I generally, well, there's a deck. I usually set the deck 3 inches below the house, -3. And so if there's a strong rain that gets in under your covered porch, it won't run in the house. And porch slabs are commonly slightly slanted away from the house so that water doesn't run into the house. Same thing goes with the garage. Now, with the garage, you have to think a little bit differently. Let me do a cross section here in the garage. It'll be on the left-hand side of the screen when the camera initializes. Okay. Garage floors are not flat, and cheap architect and home designer don't do anything but flat floors. Like the actual floor in a garage would be slanted, like this isosceles triangle I just drew. And 3D modeling, doesn't allow for that, at least not in Home Designer Pro. I guess you could put a wedge in here and emulate a slanted floor. But so what I do practically to get around that is I'll lower the garage to the lowest point. And on most houses, it's about 6 inches. And I'll do it in 2 ways. I'm going to open the dialog box here, go to the structure tab, and uncheck default on the floor and set it to -6. Now, that may or may not be true for your topography. I know nothing about your topography of your lot. But also in plan view, I'll then add an arrow. See, there's an arrow. I'm going to change that to make it a little more, make it stand out more. And I add some text with it. Let's see, I want all caps. Sloped floor. I'm going to take that, put it on. I mean, this is a common way to indicate. Of course, any guy that's ever poured a foundation already knows this, but you may be unsmart enough to hire some guy who doesn't know that, and so I put it in the plan. I try to work with people who know what they're doing, so that I don't have to put on the plans that this, and they'll get done correctly anyway, because if I got the roof plane. Oops, I don't want to get that. Just trying to move this over a little bit. Okay, so I lowered the floor a little bit. Now, the next thing I would do is take an elevation camera, and you've already modulated your terrain. That's fine. I'm just going to look at it from the front elevation. And this is probably okay with this out of the terrain, but this garage, you're going to have to build a ramp up to it to drive any vehicles into it. And ramps are expensive. It's less expensive, well, perhaps. You excavate the lands so to accommodate your design, and the design needs to accommodate the excavation. So I don't know the actuality of your terrain, but let's take a look at this. You've got some stuff in here. I'm just going to take a look at what you've got here and see what the elevations are. It's 6, -6. 6, okay, you get a rising up. What's this one? 18, it's rising up towards the house. This is a bad idea. Commonly, what I'll do in my plans, now I'm not a geological engineer either, but I've been in building for 30 years and I've never got myself into trouble. I'm going to go over to elevation data, and I'm going to use an elevation region. You generally want those elevation regions where you're going to be driving vehicles. So I'm going to put it over here, just underneath the door, this garage door here, and take it out here. And I'm going to break it around that corner to across the front of the garage, and then out this way a bit. Now, you don't put elevation regions across splines like this. So I'm going to move this spline out of the way. Let's see, I think what I'll do is I'm just going to, you don't want an elevation region, I mean a elevation spline like this crossing an elevation region. I'm going to take that. I want it just out, yeah, just outside. And what's that? That's 18 inches, isn't it? Yeah. What's this thing here? Not that, this. Okay, it's just a line. I don't know why you drew the line there unless it's not an elevation line. I'm going to delete it. What's this? Another line, okay. I don't want anything interfering with the orders that I've given the software here. I'm going to take this and copy it, stick the copy over here and rotate it. I want it just outside the flat region. I just know from experience that you don't want to cross those things. Now let's take a look. I've still got this elevation camera open. Now I didn't program this. I should program it. Okay, that's at 30 inches. And this is all, terrain is all relative to the model. Let me open the terrain plane here. You've got a subfloor. Okay, terrain, building pad. I normally set the building pad at 0. So I'm going to give you a little tutorial on terrain. I'm going to go back to the elevation camera. Okay. See, what I want is the terrain to be right at underneath the garage door, which is the lowest point on the model at -6 inches. So let me look at this isometrically. Elevation camera is a little bit too myopic to see exactly what's going on. Okay. Yeah, setting it to 0 was overkill. So I'm going to open it up and we'll set it to 12, which will lower it 12 inches. I want it where the terrain is just going underneath. Not knowing anything about your terrain, that's what I want. So I'm going to lower it to 24 inches. We'll probably have to come back up. Well, maybe not. So I'm going to click on the door. Yeah, it's still below grade. So I'm going to lower that to 30 inches. That's 30 inches from the floor 0 of the first floor, by the way. Terrain was added about 1999, and so it's always been treated as an add-on to the program. Let's go 36. Okay, we're getting close. Now click on the bottom of the door, whoops, and that's about right. You want it about 1 inch below the door threshold. Why? Because if you draw a driveway, you just take this and extend it through the terrain plane. I'm going to move this out of the driveway a little bit. You go a little more. A little bit more. I just don't want the two touching. Okay, now I'm going to go over here to terrain, road and sidewalk, driveway area. Okay, draw a driveway on there. Maybe it'll be, if it's not going to be concrete, you can reset it to gravel or whatever is realistic. I'm going to go back to the isometric camera. Okay. See, now the driveway is right at the bottom of the door. It's about where you want it. Pull that over a little bit. So anyway, that's what I can tell you about terrain. Now you can measure your site, or if you have a transit, and you can go to town and get better information than what I've done here. But I just want something that conceptually looks right. Now the foundation is not really a problem because nothing's sticking out of the ground. And not being a structural engineer, I'm not going to worry about the veracity of the foundation because I'm not trained or licensed by any state to design them. Now to address your question a little bit, I can show you a few things. I usually set my skirt thick enough where, we'll put it at 36, so that it covers the foundation. Again, because I don't design foundations and I don't want anybody seeing them in my plans, so they can take me to court and sue me for, masquerading as a structural engineer, which I'm not. Okay, but I can show you a few things. You can open the dialog box, go to the structure tab, and I showed you those settings there. And again, you've got this set to floor supply, floor supplied by foundation. No, don't use those settings. Use floor into this room, and then let's go down to the foundation and just take a look. I'm going to use this camera here. Okay, that looks about correct. Now the framing hadn't been built yet, so the framing's not showing in here under the house. I assume. Well, that depends on your structural engineer. If you have slab floor, or you have pier and beam, or whatever, that's an adjudication an engineer needs to make, not you. But this looks about correct, and then we have a slab on grade for the garage area. And this area probably has a slab because I told that dialog box up here. Let's just check. Let me check that. I didn't mean to open that. I'm going to open this and go to the structure tab, and okay, floor into this room is what I wanted to say. I was just curious if that had an effect on the foundation or not. Okay. All right. Now, if you want to manually adjust a part of the foundation, I always do that in a elevation camera. So like for whatever reason, it's really deep over here. Let's say I don't want that deep. I'm going to click on it and then hit the tab key, and then there's a handle there. I can adjust that. You can see the outer dimensions there. I can adjust this very exactly. If I wanted it 3 feet, I set it to 3 feet. There we go. And of course, that's one wall. If I want to do more than one wall, I'm going to use an angled elevation camera. Then I can see more walls at an angle like this. I'm going to click on this one, hit the tab key, set it to 3 feet. And so if you don't get what you want from the dialog, now this is a bit of work, I'll grant you that. But if you want something exact, and you don't have any silly notions about turning that into the city, and they'll reject it because you're not an engineer. But you can adjust these things if you need to for visual purposes. And click on that one, hit the tab key. I didn't get the right automatic dimension. Let me do that again. There we go, 3 feet. So you can manually adjust these things. It just takes a little work. And also you can adjust these by going to the foundation level with the automatic foundation turned off, and it has a dialog box. Go to the structure tab, and you got a ceiling setting for the basement. It's currently set to well, this comes from default settings. Let's go over here to edit default settings. See, we're on the foundation now. I'm going to go to current floor. And you can see here where that data is coming from here, default settings. So if I want this at 36, I'll just change it to 36. And that affects all the other figures except the stem wall height. I'm going to set it to 42. Don't put any significance into those figures. I'm just showing that you can change them if you want. Now I'm going to go over to foundation again. There's a separate default setting. And We'll set the minimum height to 36 instead of 37 and a half. And now I'm going to go build floor, build foundation on those new settings. Okay, now I'm going to check the foundation again, see if it looks any different. And it does. Now the footings are not 4 feet tall, they're 3 feet tall, or they're about. Now with the entire model though, with the terrain fixed, it's beginning to look like something that a sane person would live in. And I'm not kidding about the structural engineer thing. There's no state. There are some places in like way out in the boondocks where you can build a house without a structural engineer. It's a really bad idea because most people don't really know how to build a foundation, and you have to know the geological strata where the foundation is going to and the house is going to be built, what weather conditions are. And take all that, the engineer takes all that into consideration and then designs the foundation so your house, your big investment, doesn't fall down into a heap of trash. So, but you're welcome to make your own mistakes if you want to. But that's what I can tell you about foundations. They're adjustable. They're controllable through default settings and through dialog boxes. And that's basically all you need to know. Hope this helps you again. Thank you for watching.